Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Piper Report. So I just did a video going over this, but my microphone was not working properly, and I have to redo it now. Also, I know I've been talking about Syria a lot, and I don't mean to, but with more and more information that comes out, or more and more externalities that are related to the Syrian chemical gas attack, I think it is pertinent to talk about it. Anyways, in my last video, I discussed how the bassist of Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, basically denounced the alleged chemical weapons attack in Syria, how he said he believes it's a false flag. Well, now we have different evidence that also substantiates what he said. Not necessarily a false flag, but it puts him in even a better light. The reason why is because he denounces the group, the White Helmets, in this speech, which I'm going to show you here based on emails, which are pretty interesting. The problem becomes, not necessarily the problem for those who believe that was a false flag, but the problem for those that criticize those who believe that, is that the whole narrative that if you believe in the chemical attacks, if you believe in the false flag of Syria, then you are a Russian sympathizer. You are a conspiracy theorist that has no proof, and you only want to do it to help Putin. That is the narrative being pushed, that if you question the mainstream narrative of the chemical weapons attack in Syria, which has yet to be substantiated, it is because you are either a Russian sympathizer or because you are a hardcore conspiracy theorist and you should just be ignored. That is a poor mentality to have. I did a video, 27 admitted false flags. So yes, false flags exist, and some of the false flags in that video were truly unnerving. But let's go over some of the article. So, the emails were released by a journalist named, where is it at? I guess I'll start from the beginning. Emails have emerged revealing how the controversial Syrian activist group, the White Helmets, tried to lobby Pink Floyd co-founder Roger Waters with Saudi money. The revelations have been published on Max Blumenthal's project. In an email from October 2016, Roger Waters is invited to a fundraiser organized by Saudi billionaire Hani Farsi to honor the work of the White Helmets. In it, he is also encouraged to watch a documentary about the group. And it didn't stop there. Just days before his recent concert in Barcelona, Waters was contacted by a French journalist working for the White Helmets. The reporter asked Waters for a few moments on stage to deliver a message to the children of Syria. That is kind of what I was talking about earlier, my last video. And instead of him allowing that to happen, he went on stage and he preached what most of us believe, that he doesn't think Assad used chemical weapons on his people, that he thinks it was a false flag, and he thinks that that false flag justifying military action against Assad is not only immoral, but just downright dangerous, and I completely agree with that. Here is the email in question. Dear Mr. Waters, I am writing to invite you and a guest to join Hani at a fundraising dinner that he is hosting on Monday, 21st November on behalf of the Syria campaign. The dinner will take place at the Bergali Hotel. The Syria campaign launched in 2014 with a mission to elevate the voices of Syria's peaceful heroes and accelerate international efforts towards an end to the conflict. The Asfari Foundation provided the startup funds for the Syria campaign, and we will be joining on the evening by Sazwan Asfari. Since its launch, the organization has been working with peaceful Syrian groups to build them an international profile. Most notably, their work with the White Helmets has helped these rescue workers attract more than $15 million in government funding and turn them into household names, narrowly missing out on the Nobel Peace Prize this year. I would encourage you to watch the incredibly powerful documentary, The White Helmets. You may also find articles from The Guardian and Time magazine of interest. You will also be joined at the dinner by James Sadri, the director of the Syria campaign, who will talk about how this important work has the power to unlock major institutional funds for peaceful Syrian groups, and more importantly, how it would help shift the conflicts towards peace. I very much hope you're able to join him, blah, blah, blah. So here's what Roger Waters said. Here is where he denounced the White Helmets. The White Helmets is a fake organization that exists only to create propaganda for jihadists and terrorists. That's my belief. We have opposing beliefs. If we were to listen to the propaganda of the White Helmets and others, we would be encouraged to encourage our governments to start dropping bombs on people in Syria. This would be a mistake of monumental proportions for us as human beings, he added. Blumenthal now, who was the person that released the emails between Roger Waters and that of members of the White Helmet, members of the Saudi billionaire family. Here's what he said about the White Helmets. They were operating on the ground alongside Al-Qaeda and their allies, and these are just documented facts. For the first time, a mainstream figure, talking about Roger Waters, on an international stage on the eve of war, has validated what we've been reporting, and he did so in Barcelona to loud cheers from the audience that was opposed to a war waged against international law, without the approval of the parliaments of the governments that launched the war. And the White Helmets were the only source that these governments were relying on to justify their attacks. This was enormously rousing speech by Roger Waters that has legitimized the journalism that we've been so mercilessly attacked for publishing, and it's forced those who attacked us and accused us of being conspiracy theorists to actually look at what we've reported. And they really have nothing to say back to us. They can't simply dismiss it as a Kremlin conspiracy anymore when Roger Waters is saying this. And I think that is key. And I think that is absolutely correct. Now we have somebody who is big. Roger Waters is huge, especially over in Europe. Pink Floyd was considered one of the greatest bands of all time. People like David Gilmour, who is still touring, and Roger Waters are praised as heroes, if not gods. And when someone like Roger Waters, who comes out and denounces not just the attacks on Syria based on what he perceives as a false flag, but also the White Helmets, which is an organization that is supposed to be about peace, and he says that they are propaganda to justify attacks on Syria, it really puts a monkey wrench in the whole narrative. Because they can no longer say now that it is only people of the Russian government that are saying these chemical weapons attack did not happen. Because Roger Waters is not part of the Russian government. Now, they might try to say that he is a Russian stooge, but it's simply not true. I think it's also important how he denied the invitation from the Saudi billionaire family. Think about that. He stood up to the Saudi Arabia government, which is just as responsible for funding terrorist sects. And as Blumenthal says, that White Helmets work alongside Al-Qaeda and their allies. Now, this might seem kind of crazy because, Al-Qaeda is supposedly a bad group of people. Rand Paul and Tulsi Gabbard both introduced legislation to their respective chambers to stop funding terrorist rebels in the Middle East. Think about that. Why would they even have to do that to begin with? Why would they have to introduce legislation for the U.S. to stop funding terrorist cells overseas? We should not be funding terrorist cells. The foreign policy of the U.S. is as follows. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And that is simply not true. Because look what happens when we fund rebels. Like we funded ISIS. Now at the time they weren't ISIS, they were just rebel groups. But then they became ISIS, and now they're using those weapons that we sold to them, that we gave them. They're using them on us and our allies. We should not be funding terrorist cells. We should not keep on funding the enemies of our enemies, because they are not our friends. Maybe they have the potential to be our friend, but for the most part, they never do. They don't listen to us. And not only that, it is affecting the fiscal welfare of the American people. War is money, which is good for the military-industrial complex, but bad for the American people in general. And this is why I denounced the attack on Syria. Even if, and I said this earlier, I think I did. I might have said this in the last video. I don't think so, but I might have. If so, if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. Like I said, this is the second video on this I'm doing. So Assad, or rather, Nick Fuentes said that he believes the reason Trump attacked Syria was a show of strength. He did it just for a show of strength, to basically show the world that if something happens and we say don't do it, we are not going to keep backing up. We are going to stand up strong. And whether or not you agree with that is irrelevant, because the reason those attacks happened were based on a chemical weapons attack that has not been proven to happen, that has not been proven that Assad was responsible for it. Which leads to the question. If this was indeed a false flag attack, and the US, France, and the UK all decided to bomb Syria because of it, what is to stop this same group or a different group from going to other countries that we may have some rash discourse with, not really proper relations with, and do a false flag over there to get us more involved? There is nothing to stop that, and they can do that. And that is the problem here. That is why if we are going to bomb a country, we need proof. We are still waiting on proof from last year yet. It has not been given. Even in the chemical weapons attack in 2013, members of the Turkish government admitted that they were responsible for the false flag. Really? There's a report, I believe it was in The Guardian, an article back in 2013 before the Syrian strikes happened, where members of the US government were trying to figure out how they can unleash a chemical weapons attack in Syria and blame it on the Assad regime. I believe that's also in my 27 admitted false flags video. That is important. Important information here. I am not a conspiracy theorist. False flags do exist. And there are false flags that are horrible. Especially stuff that the US government has done. Operation Big Itch, Operation Dropkick, Operation Northwoods, Operation MK Ultra. MK Ultra wasn't a false flag, but these are all ideas of the malevolent means that governments will do. Either for war, either for money, either for power, it doesn't matter. I am a patriot. I love my country. I support Donald Trump. But we have to be honest about these things. We cannot bomb countries based on evidence that has not been substantiated. We cannot feel compelled to be the world police anymore. We cannot. We cannot think we have to be involved with every single foreign affair. Let's do America first. Let's take care of all of our citizens. And then, once we get our shit figured out, maybe then we can go over and help our allies or try to get involved with other countries. Until then, though, spending money on useless war to feed the military-industrial complex and to make people like John McCain and Bill Kristol extremely happy is counterproductive. It doesn't help anybody. It's only going to make things worse. And I'm done.